Hello everyone, Palash here. Today we are going to learn another very interesting concept of what is called as statement assumptions, which are frequently asked as filler questions in our non-CAT exams. The chapter is very easy. It's not at all painful like syllogisms that we just did in the previous video, but slightly tricky. There are certain approaches that you must understand when you look at these questions. So the agenda is threefold: that we are going to quickly understand what are assumptions and how to find out and differentiate between the logical and the illogical ones, quickly understand what are the concepts that are needed for solving these questions, and then we're going to look at certain 20 odd questions that I have solved in the sheet, which I've given as a pretext, pre-class sheet in the lesson plan, that we will solve and follow that how these concepts are applied to the question. So without much ado, let's get started with the video today. Now, I'm sure assumptions is something that you might have figured out. That what are assumptions in general? Assumptions in life are quite a lot of things. They are tentative suppositions which we make. For example, we assume that we'll crack this exam in near future. Certain implications, if somebody says sarcastically that you guys are too smart, it implies that you are not, and therefore implications is also under the purview of assumptions. Predicting possibilities, something like anyone who wins the toss wins the match, is a possibility that I'm predicting about, and therefore taking an assumption. Certain logical missing links, like something that this car is blue, therefore it cannot be of Sam. Now, what is missing here is that Sam doesn't have a blue car. I'm not stating that out, but it's clearly the correct assumption that is required for this argument. Sometimes assumptions go as too obvious information as well. For example, a ship it was transported from Mumbai port to Visakhapatnam port. I think I do not need to specify which is the mode of transportation. The ship will obviously be taken via sea. And therefore, very interesting two important questions are that assumptions are stated ideas, or assumptions are something that are never stated, and to which I think you would have clearly got in mind that assumptions are some things which are unstated ideas, some things that are not very fixed or not have been validated for sure, but are taken into consideration while you say something up. So also, another intriguing question is that is anything I can imagine becomes an assumption? And if yes, then where to draw the line? How can I decide objectively that what I am thinking or what I'm imagining is correct and what the examiner would have imagined is wrong? Now, to sort these two problems, I first want to state up that imagination is not assuming. Assumptions, therefore, in our non-CAT competitive exams are basically about finding out the logical implications of the statements that are given to you. Remember, the topic of this questions are not assumptions and conclusions, but about statements and the requisite kind of assumptions that are required for that statement. So they are statement assumptions. They'll be giving you a set of statements, and then I have to find out the logical implications that are not stated, though they are hinted and though they are very obvious within this given sentence or the statement that they are proclaiming. Now, what is also very important for you to understand that we have to keep assumptions we have to keep imaginations at bay, and for that, if we start to learn and assess it in an objective manner, it becomes easy. Now, what is therefore objective and subjective? Objective is something that varies from people to people, and subjective is something that, I just said the opposite. Objective is something that does not vary from people to people, and subjective is something that varies from people to people. So I always give this example to make things better. For example, if I just ask, what is the opposite of sweet? I think in a subjective thinking, we might be debating ourselves up that whether the opposite of sweet is sour, whether the opposite of sweet is salty, whether the opposite of sweet is bland or spicy, or so on and so forth, or none of the above maybe. But objectively, all of you would agree that the opposite of sweet is going to be something which is not sweet. And therefore, we are going to assess our assumptions in a objective criteria. I mean, isn't all the subjective taste also not sweet? So The reason why I'm sharing this example is to make you understand that we have to keep assumptions in an objective criteria or objective manner rather than the subjectivity involved in it. And then what are there for the concept that we should apply? I think very simple. There are only three kind of concepts. Assumptions are supposed to be the pre-statements, the ideas or the notions that are or should be considered before any statement or that event is given, or they are supposed to be prerequisite conditions. So what are the prerequisite condition? Any logical necessity that is irreversibly required for the statement or the event that is given to you to be logically valid. I'll give you examples, don't stress. And understand both of these are from given speaker's perspective. They are assumptions are supposed to be taken from the speaker's perspective. Anybody who has delivered that statement or given that particular comment is the person who, from whose perspective I have to find out that what are the logical implications by that particular guy or that someone who has given that statement. So just remember these three with the mnemonic that I've made as PPS, that is pre-statement or prerequisite conditions, and both of these from a speaker's perspective. Now, to put things in your mind, let's take an example. Let's say a statement is given. The teacher declared that he will be teaching the students grammar. Now, the speaker obviously is the teacher. Now, if I say, look at the pre-statement, the student may be willing to learn grammar, and you pause a while and think that whether this is a valid or an invalid assumption. Some of you might say that this is invalid. They may not be learning. They may not be willing, or how can we comment about their willingness? But to put things in perspective, let's take a very simple example that if a teacher declares in a general way, I mean in a generic or a general way, and not considering any exceptional scenarios into being, don't you think that the teacher will not force any particular subject on a student, but rather just declare things which they are willing to do? And in that case, I think definitely they may be willing to learn grammar is absolutely correct. From a speaker's perspective, look at the second one. Students maybe wish to crack any competitive exam. Now, though from our reality that we look in, I think this might be a possibility that, yeah, we may assume that, they might be preparing for a competitive exam, and that is why they are going to do grammar just like us. But again, in this case, definitely this will become an invalid claim. Why? Because in the statement that is given to me, there is no declaration or hint or any particular implication of competitive exam. And therefore, this particular assumption is invalid. It is invalid for this statement. So we learn another important concept, that I'm not supposed to impose my reality on the statements. Okay? Don't impose your reality to the statements that are given. Keep the statements different. All you need to find out in a logical general purview or in a general setting, what should be the logical implication of the statement that is given to me from speaker's perspective. Let's look at the logical conditions. Number one, teacher knows grammar. I think that is definitely valid. Teacher knows how to teach, definitely valid. If I combine the 1 plus 2, I get a 3. The teacher knows how to teach grammar. Now, given the choice in exams, if a choice is given between 1, 2, and 3, I want you all to go for 3, because obviously 1 and 2 are encompassed or already taken into consideration when you apply for 3. So that doesn't mean that 1 and 2 are wrong actually in life, but 1 and 2 will not become very clear, correct answers when there is a 3, which is encompassing the 1 and 2 in a competitive exam. So 3 in this case is a prerequisite condition. It's not a notion. How are notions and statements and conditions different? Statements can go wrong, but conditions are supposed to be 100% true. They are supposed to be logical necessity. If the teacher itself doesn't know how to teach, why is he declaring that he will teach grammar? If you don't know what is grammar, if you don't know how to teach, why is he considering it? Why is he telling it in the first place? So be understandable that logical conditions are something that are 100% true with respect to it, but notions or ideas or pre-statements are something that are not 100% true, but at least in a general setting, they are 90% chance that this is something that will be logically implied. Let's move to the next one. For example, the students may be able to understand what he teaches, while versus the student may be not be able to understand what he teaches. Now, many of you might consider that, first one seems valid, but the second one also seems valid because they may not be able to. Again, this is the very big mistake, common mistake that the people make. The second one is true from an audience perspective. Okay, if somebody is watching the teacher, he's going to assume that maybe the students might not understand. But when the teacher declared what is from the teacher's mindset, don't he assume that they may be able to understand? I mean, why will teacher think that, okay, I'm going to do my time pass and then skip out, and then probably they learn, they don't learn, I don't care. I mean, even if the teacher thinks like that, isn't the teacher being illogical? Think about it for a while. So, we always take optimistic things into consideration. For example, when you're watching this video, have automatically assumed that you will be able to understand. When I declared I will be teaching you assumptions, I automatically assume that you may be able to understand. I mean, it's a pointless exercise that you may not be able to understand, but still I'm teaching and I know that you will not be able to understand. So, my assumptions can't be invalid just because you are not able to understand. So I hope this sets into your mind that speaker's mindset is also one very careful, important perspective that is involved in terms of answering these questions of assumptions. I'll take another example. Let's say a statement is given that Robin boarded a flight to New York from Mumbai. So assumption number one says Robin wishes to go to New York. I mean, in a logical implication way, I think this makes sense that Robin would wish that is the reason why he will board the flight in the first place. Now, Robin will reach New York. Now, there is a problem. There's a problem. Why? Because, see, optimistically, yes, Robin may reach New York or Robin wishes to go to New York is fair enough, but he's just boarding the flight. Will the flight take off? Will the flight be in air? Will the flight land? Will the flight reach its destination on proper time? I think there are a lot of things that we are just not going to consider it from just boarding of the flight. To make it more clear, let me give you this example. For example, if you just enroll with this program, it's not just the sufficient or the necessary reason you will qualify the exam. Your enrollment with this program shows or implies your logical willingness to crack the exam, but will you crack the exam depends upon the exam and you giving it. So try to consider it. That also another thing that I want to add to your list of understanding the assumptions is that assumptions are momentous. They are thought about in terms of the moment which they are taken. So in this example, when somebody is saying that Robin boarded a flight, he is informing me, whoever this is the speaker, I think he would not assume that Robin will reach New York. So this goes invalid. I think a prerequisite condition is a flight is capable of taking a person from Mumbai to New York. I think that is 100% valid because this is a logical necessity. In this case, and therefore definitely a valid assumption. Robin may reach New York and Robin may not reach New York. Obviously, not reach is definitely out of question. Now, with the word may, it's sometimes assumed that yeah, this may reach New York. That is the reason why he's boarding the flight in the first place. See, will reaching was a problem, but may reach can fall within the logical implication, and therefore we're going to accept the claim. Now, having said that, I will refine all the concepts which we just understood, the PPS, the prerequisite condition, the pre-statement, and both of them from speaker's mindset in one basic funda, which is about understanding that you are supposed to find out the assumptions that are required for the above statements and not regarding the statements. So I've seen a lot of students making a mistake that they fall for the trap of the assumptions that are regarding. For example, in this case, this assumption may be regarding that he might not reach New York. Okay, in this case, this might be regarding that he may not, the students may not understand what he teaches. However, if you think this may be regarding it, that yeah, maybe they want to crack any competitive exams. I mean, who knows for sure that they will not, or they are not uh, learning grammar for any competitive exam. Having said that, understand the funda that we are supposed to find out is whether the assumptions are required or not. So if I apply this trick, I think I can filter out the illogical assumptions from the logical ones. For example, isn't this required for this statement? But this is not required. All the three are required for the above statement. This is required for the above statement. This is not. So all the things that are definitely required are absolutely the valid ones. Something that are not required necessarily for the statement, which is regarding it, is probably an invalid claim. So just keep these two principles in mind, that I have to find out a prerequisite condition or a pre-statement from speaker's perspective, but I have to find out something that is required for that particular assumption to be valid. So let's apply this. For example, if I say that Tanu asked a servant to get vegetables from the market, you can pause it a while and think about whether the assumption 1 is required or not. The servant knows the location of the market. Won't Tanu assume that the servant knows the location of the market? Because this is required for this to be valid. The market may not have vegetables. I mean, why will Tanu assume that the market doesn't have vegetables and then still challenging the servant to buy vegetables, right? I think this is not a general scenario. So that is why we will refrain from this marking it as a correct answer or an option. So I'm going to say that the first one is required, but the second one is not required. It may be regarding it that there might be a chance that vegetables are not there in the market, but obviously Tanu will not assume it. Tanu's mindset does not allow it to happen, and therefore this is an invalid claim or an invalid assumption. So having said that, I think let's quickly move to the application of it. There's nothing more theoretically to be learned in this. So let's start with the first one. I'm sure that you would have solved the sheet. The first example is just I've taken, though a bit modified. Please take into consideration what are the correct notes, what are the correct code for answering it. A implies that only one is implicit, B implies only two is implicit, C implies both of them are implicit, and D implies neither of them are implicit. Now, having said that, let's look at the first one. So I have to just find out which of the following are required. The required are the right one and the regarding are the wrong ones. So Tanu asked the servant to get vegetables from the market. I think the first one, he will be able to purchase the vegetables, absolutely is required for this, and he will be able to locate the vegetable market is also required for this. So both of them seems to be required, and therefore the answer goes as C, that is both of them are valid. Let's look at the next. Activist wants the parliamentarian to pass the women reservation bill. The bill proposes the 33% seats of the Lok Sabha and the state legislative assemblies shall be reserved for the women. Now, the passing of the bill will lead to empowerment of the women in the political arena. I think, isn't this required for this? I mean, what other reasons would have been possible, right? So the passing of the bill will lead to the empowerment, and that is the reason why they want to pass the bill. So that is required. The provision of the bill will lead to the decrease in the incidence of crime against women. But we are assuming that there is a crime happening in the first place, and that this will reduce it. But I don't think this is required for this statement to be valid. This is kind of regarding, and therefore we cancel this out. So the option that will be the correct answer will become as Bombay. Let's move to the next. The government wants to make a change. The idea is that they want to make a change in the adoption laws. So there are already laws, but they want to make a change in the adoption laws so that only the married couples are allowed to adopt children. Married couple need more children. I think again that's not the point, that they need more children. That's not required, but they will make better parents as compared to the unmarried couples. That is definitely something that is required. So this is required, but this is regarding, and therefore again the answer to this question will become Bombay. Fourth, producers prefer to sign George, a pedestrian actor, over others, and for their films, despite the fact that he doesn't have a hit film to his name. George has done a lot of hit films. So I think that is a counterclaim. He says doesn't have a hit film. He says he has done a lot of films. So that's definitely wrong. That's not an assumption. And George is very handsome and charming. Isn't handsome and very charming a requisite for for signing with George? I think acting is the prerequisite implication. So this is definitely not valid, and therefore the answer will go as Delhi, which is both of them are not required for this to be valid. The fifth one, in order to tackle the problem, the law authorities have to cut down number of cars that can be registered every month. So the growing number of cars is one of the major reasons for congestion. I think this is required for this to happen. So valid, and people prefer to commute by car. Now the word preference becomes a problem. Why? Because we may prefer to do nothing in life, but still you have to, we are here watching this video. I mean, life really is very ironical. So I think the word preference is becoming a problem here. So if we say people commute by cars, valid, but people prefer to commute by cars, I don't know whether what people prefer they necessarily do it or not. So it's going a bit far-fetched, because whatever you prefer is not necessarily you follow. So therefore I think A is the correct answer for this question. The sixth one, scientists believe that galaxy other than the Milky Way exists in the cosmos. This new galaxy has an Earth-like planet that supports life. Earth and Earth-like planet have the potential to support life, absolutely required for this. But only an Earth-like planet can have the word. The problem happens with the word only. Only becomes exclusive. Nowhere in the statement is the exclusivity mentioned. Okay, so Earth-like planet can have life in this cosmos, valid. Only an Earth-like planet modifies the original statement, cannot be used interchangeably as a sense, and therefore wrong. So answer to this question will become A. Seventh, pickpocketing has rampant. Rampant is like growing in the crowded places. Pickpocketing is a banned activity. I don't know whether it is banned or not. It's not reflected from this statement, therefore not required for this statement. It is not required, it's regarding this, and it takes only in the crowded places. I do not know that. So only is again creating an exclusive event, and therefore not valid. So both of them are wrong. Answer is D. Eighth, the world is nothing but a mass of matter enlivened by consciousness. Now, the catch is always with the word enlivened. Enlivened doesn't mean to give life. It means to make something more lively. So consciousness can give life to the matter, absolutely goes out of the window. And then the world is nothing but dead matter in the absence of consciousness, again goes out of the window. They're just playing with the word enliven. Enliven doesn't mean to give life. It means to give, to make something more lively. So both of them goes invalid, and therefore Delhi. Ninth one, no living being other than man is a social animal. Non-living beings are not social animals. We are not talking of non-living beings. This is definitely not required for this statement to be valid. Therefore, absolutely a pathetic argument. A pathetic assumption, illogical assumption. Assumption 2, there are at least one more living being other than man. That's absolutely true, because no living being other than man is a social animal. So there are living beings, and only man is one among them, which is a social animal. But there are other living beings as well. So there is at least one more living being other than man is perfectly a valid argument. It is required for this to be valid, and therefore correct answer is Bombay. 10th one, child abuse is increasing and has become a major form. Okay, a major form of an exploitation. Now, if it has become a major form, the other forms exist. That automatically becomes a correct answer, or automatically is implied. And then children can be subjugated to abuse and exploitation, absolutely correct as well. So both of them are correct, and therefore the answer is C. Next one, teachers have observed that children respond better in situation where a variety of activities are taking place than in a situation with single activity. Now, teachers keep track of activities. I think that is required for this to be true. And children can take part in various activities, also required for this to be true. Therefore, both of them are true, and then therefore the answer is C. Next one, people in North India wear more woolen than people in South India. Good quality woolens are available more in North India than in South India, and people of North India are not as strong. I think both of them doesn't make sense. Therefore, invalid claims. Both of them are not required for it. Therefore, the answer goes as Delhi. A 13th one, UPSC interview conducted for selecting people for jobs measure the personality traits of the candidates routinely. So UPSC conducts interviews routinely. Personality traits are a measurable entity, I think obviously required for it. If it was not measurable, why are they doing it? And then personality traits are an important factor with respect to performance of the job. I mean, that is the reason why they are judging it in the first place, right? So both the assumptions are definitely required. The answer goes as C. 14th one, a very good catch in this question. Production of vegetable continues to be low despite the introduction of the BT variety of vegetable seeds. The production of vegetables was expected to increase after the introduction of the BT variety. I think that is definitely assumed because there was expected, it continues to be low. That was expected to increase and therefore valid. The vegetable production was poor. Oh, the word is there is a word play. We cannot use low and poor interchangeably. So poor is a qualitative measure while low is a quantitative measure. Therefore, I think this is invalid. This is regarding it. This is not required for this statement to be valid. It's not the assumption of this statement, therefore invalid. So answer to 14th will become A. And the last question, 15th one. Shakuntala, Councillor Banerjee said that some children are talented, but they have problems of funds and obstacles at home, so that they don't get an opportunity to show their talent. So a student needs an appropriate opportunity to show his talents. Absolutely correct. That is required for it. And then all students have some or other talent. That is wrong, because we have some of them require certain talent. So definitely the answer goes as 1. So I think that's it from my side. I hope you have understood this. It's a simple chapter. It's a tricky one. Just keep it in mind that we have to just apply the PPS technique to answer them. And I hope you will ace your questions of assumption statement that are given to you. All the very best. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video.